Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free, with mountain hills and mountains and things. Our land is girt by sea, with hills and tinkle bells, our beauty rich and rare, with lots of things and kangaroos. Advance Australia fair, with miles and miles of fencing wire. Advance Australia fair.
Many Australian gardens are being taken over by lawn and order. So throughout this program, we're going to show you how you can convert this into this.
Whilst your neighbors slave away with their new acreage meditation, lawn mowing,
You sit back and enjoy the fruits of your garden while they fight bugs with toxic pesticides. You'll be using companion planting and other permaculture techniques to keep the pests at bay. And while they're wondering why their gardens need so much work, you'll be wondering why you didn't look into permaculture earlier. Permaculture comes from the words permanent and agriculture. Part of it is about gardening, but it's also philosophy and lifestyle. It focuses on creating a more sustainable way of life.
as the Earth's resources are running out, permaculture gives us a simple way in which we can create a garden. It's not polluting, it provides for its own needs, and it works with the natural qualities of animals and plants and structures on the landscape so that they work together in harmony. Permaculture not only avoids wasting resources, but it actually works with nature to create more. More soil, more food, more water, fuel, and wildlife. By the end of this program, you'll be able to develop your own permaculture garden, an abundant oasis, with maybe an added herb spiral, a pond, a worm farm, or even a chicken tractor.
The backbone of permaculture is design. By carefully designing your garden, you can have year-round food. Design copies the most efficient system there is, nature. You can learn a lot by actually watching how this fountain of life works. Bill Mollison, one of the founders of permaculture, suggests we work with nature rather than against it. Should we start?
Ready?
Aim.
Garden!
Through this program, we're going to cover 7 main topics. The formula, creating a food forest, designing your garden, soils, develop a sense of humus, water, bug busters, and all creatures, furred and feathered. Firstly, the formula. This shows 7 of the main principles of permaculture, which can apply to every part of your garden. Aloe vera is useful for burns and skin problems.
Aloe vera?
I use herbs like aloe vera, parsley, basil and lemongrass up to 3 times a day. That's 1,095 times a year. To save walking, I keep them as close to the house as possible. This is what I call my Zone 1. Let's see how permaculturalist Frances Lang lays out her garden.
We drink a fair bit of herb tea, so I like to keep the plants for herb teas and the herbs that we use in cooking as close to the house as possible. And then things that we cut every night for a salad, like the lettuces, are in close to the house. And the more long-term things like the pumpkins that you really only need to get to once or twice a season to harvest, they're a lot further away. So the garden's laid out to make what you need most often most accessible.
With the pumpkins in Zone 2 include veggies such as rhubarb and asparagus, animals like chickens and ducks, small fruit trees, a pond and small native plants. Fruit trees such as mulberries, oranges, peaches and nectarines can go just beyond your veggie garden in what we call Zone 3. And utilising the space underneath these, you can plant comfrey, nasturtiums and even undercover pumpkins. You can also plant medium-sized natives, including bush foods like lemon-scented myrtle. If you have an acreage or a farm, you can then extend into Zone 4, which can include livestock, cabinet timbers, firewood trees, and wildlife areas. Beyond this is Zone 5, an area of untouched nature, left as a place for observation and quiet reflection. Okay, that's enough quietude. Let's start Zone 1, the very beginning outside the kitchen door. Let's build a herb sparrow. Start with a mound of soil. If you have some rubble to get rid of, then you can hide this in the middle. Place your largest rocks or logs at the bottom and spiral them up around the mound all the way to the top. Mulch heavily and plant your favourite herbs. As these herb spirals use vertical space, they are great for small gardens.
By placing things where they will have many uses, the garden becomes a lot more productive, and that means a lot less work. Here I'm planting a lemongrass border. This fully established lemongrass border will have many uses. It acts as a short windbreak for the garden, it's a great mulch source, and it keeps out invasive grass. It also has great shoots for cooking.
Makes a hulu skirt.
And a great cup of tea.
As with plants, structures can also have three uses. For example, this house is a shelter for people, acts as a trellis for this passion fruit, and the roof collects fresh rainwater.
Bill Mollison says only about 13% of lawns are useful in recreation, sport, or even as rest areas. So for your lawn, you may want to look at ways you can give it many uses.
The uses of my lawn are many at the moment. I've got 3 young sons, twins that are 8 and another one that's 10, and they're very keen throughout most of the year on playing lots of different sports. That's the main function of the lawn. It's designed to be a recreational area for them. In fact, we had to modify the garden to make the lawn there for them, from the point of view of just having a safe area for them to play where we know where they are, and also they get a lot of pleasure from it. The badminton hooks up to the end of the clothesline there, goes across to the other side of the fence, and we have, our summer tournaments, and lots of kids from around the neighbourhood come and they play, and it's a great way to encourage lots of children to come. And I also sort of think that when they get used to what my garden's about, and they learn to sort of go and wander through it and have a look around, and sometimes we have mulching days where they all come over. The neighbours have got 4 sons, so they often come over and help. So there's lots of other reasons why, having a lawn can induce neighbourly sort of relationships as well, so yeah.
Many resources end up as garbage, simply because we haven't thought of ways to use them. About 70% of all waste that ends up in landfills could be valuable compost. If you think creatively, Most rubbish, such as old bathtubs, can become a resource. This resource is then added energy to your garden. The trick is to keep this energy cycling through your garden. For example, food scraps from the kitchen can feed backyard chickens, and we can put their manure back on the garden to help grow more veggies. Another way to cycle energy is to let some of your plants go to seed. Then spread these seeds through the garden. All these parsley seedlings are the result of one plant going to seed. Now, all I have to do is transplant it. You don't have to always plant your fruit and veggies, just toss them over ripe ones over the veranda.
By getting animals and plants to do the work for us, we don't need to rely on so many materials and machines from outside. This chicken tractor is a biological resource. We can move the tractor around the garden so that the chickens do the weeding, fertilize, and clean up the insects for us. This living arrowroot fence stops the nosy neighbors from seeing what's going on in here. Jenny likes to think that she's the boss, but that's only because there's a million workers under her. We're surrounded by biological resources, worms for tillage, plants for shelter, animals for fertilization and pest control. The list goes on. Don't do all the work yourself. Put these resources to work for you. Due to their large number of diverse species, rainforests are the most stable ecosystems on Earth. Their plants and animals work together to provide for each other's needs. We can copy the stability and healthiness of a rainforest by carefully integrating a wide range of plants and animals into our gardens. This ensures year-round food supply, and by adding a few novel plants, you'll spice up your life.
Like pieces of a puzzle, good design ensures that all parts of the garden fit together. If you had ducks, fruit trees and a pond, think how they could be related to each other. Firstly, the ducks could be throughout the fruit trees where they keep the ground cover down, as well as eating the insects. The ducks could also live around the pond, where they would be adding nutrient to the water. This could then flow downhill to fertilise the fruit trees.
If your neighbors have suddenly taken all of your afternoon sun, try to make the most of this problem. To do this, focus on solutions. This is a great opportunity to grow plants that enjoy some shade. So let's see solutions and not problems. Instead of looking at this damp, boggy spot as a problem area, build a pond there or grow water-loving plants. Old fences can become trellises for climbing plants like choco. And if you're really brave, you can apply this principle to every part of your life.
We've just seen the formula, which is the basic principles of permaculture. Now we'll look at ways to create and design a permaculture garden. You'll need to adapt the species to suit the climate you live in. What does permaculture mean to you?
Okay, my understanding of it is that it's a unique way of growing things without using chemicals and artificial fertilisers, and that it works.
Many schools and gardens have large areas of lawn. By constantly mowing these, nature is kept at its lowest, most inefficient level. Let's compare the average lawn-abiding backyard to nature, the most effective system.
The average yard has very few species.
Nature is diverse.
The average yard needs a lot of work.
Nature maintains itself.
Yards are insect pest heavens.
Nature's pests are kept in balance.
Yards waste energy.
Nature cycles energy.
Yards have very few layers.
Nature has layer upon layer upon layer. In forests, there are many layers of plants, starting from the smallest ground covers through to shrubs, vines, and going up to enormous trees. Although this is highly productive, it is not appropriate for our backyards. We can copy the way the rainforest grows, but only substitute plants that are more useful to us. A food forest in part of a subtropical garden could include a bottom layer with plants like ginger, a middle layer with smaller trees that handle some shade like tamarillo, coffee, chilies, and pawpaw. Interspersed with these could be larger trees such as avocados and nitrogen-fixing plants.
I wonder what the neighbours are up to. Oh, yes. 7:30 Sunday morning, and he's mowing the lawn.
Oh my God. I remember that mowing nightmare. It was like painting the Sydney Harbour Bridge. You finally finish, and it's time to start all over again. I plant heaps of ground covers now instead.
I wonder what he's up to now. The lawnmower's just stopped by the looks of it.
Pesticides.
Oh.
He's spraying pesticides.
Oh.
I've got heaps less pests now. Do you know what I do?
What?
Put a lot of scented herbs through my garden, like rosemary, lavender.
That's what companion planting is, isn't it? When some plants make good neighbours and they just like to live next door to each other, like basil and tomato and roses and garlic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think he's just got 8 rows of spinach this year.
That's where all my grasshoppers have gone.
That's
Do you know, I plant about 120 different species in my garden. So that the pests are going for one particular type of veggie, and they just get totally confused.
That's Confucianism, isn't it? The theory espoused by the ancient Chinese philosopher Confuse us?
But there is order to this chaos. Let's go and look at a guild.
Okay. A guild is like a small part of a forest. It is an association of plants and animals, or just plants that are working together. For example, here is a guild of 3 plants. This fragrant ground cover is pennyroyal. It repels pests and is a living mulch. Next to it, I'm planting pigeon pea. This is a legume, which means it takes nitrogen from the air and puts it into the soil. As it is fast growing, it will provide light shade and shelter for this orange tree. And so, thanks to this pigeon pea and the pennyroyal, the orange tree will be a lot more fruitful. This guild of corn, beans, and squash was used by the ancient Aztecs. The beans fix nitrogen for the corn and the squash. They then can use the corn to climb up, and the squash is a ground cover. In this way, we can produce 3 crops from an area that would normally only produce 1. Many traditional people produce a lot of food using plant guilds and a diverse range of plant species. In northern Vietnam, there was a tribe of people that used 1,500 plant species in their daily lives. They knew each plant by its use, its seed, its flower, when they could harvest it, and how to process it. Today, most of this knowledge is lost, and we in the West rely on only 20 to 30 plant species for our entire diet. This is very difficult for us to get the nutrients and medicine that we need out of the food that we eat. It's also a dangerous position to be in. Imagine how easy it would be for pests to conquer such a limited genetic range.
These are delicious homegrown tomatoes, loaded with vitamins. I often grow about 4 different types of tomatoes, so if the pesties get one, I know I've got 3 other varieties on hand. Compare these to this. A shop-bought, kind of yellow, kind of plastic tomato. Although it does have one function. It makes a great tennis ball.
What does permaculture mean to you?
How long were you up for that?
As long as you want.
Oh, look, systematic approach to integrated design of the built and natural environments. Ta-da! I'm going to copyright that. Is that right? Did we win?
Imagine building a house without first designing it. Designing your garden to meet your needs and avoid problems is just as important. But few people do it, and later they pay the price. For example, large trees near houses can have shocking effects. They suck water from what should be a highly productive area. They drop leaves in the gutters. They can drop dangerous limbs and can be potential fireballs, ready to ignite. By having lush areas, including vines and veggies near the house, there is less chance of it burning down. It is amazing how many people have their veggies hidden down the back as if it's an embarrassment. They may look after them when they start off enthusiastically, but once it's rainy or they're ill, it's unlikely they'll venture out for some spinach. Designing and making veggie gardens can be fun, as you often have surprising results. For a whole garden design, start by pacing out and then drawing a base map. This is a map that roughly shows everything that exists in proportion. The next stage is a concept plan. Here's mine. It shows the basic idea of where everything goes, but not specific details. Before I started this design, I worked out what I want from my garden, such as food, medicine, wildlife, and relaxation. I then worked out my zones, determining where each of the plants and structures should go. I also looked at factors affecting the garden, such as where the different summer and winter suns fell, and the windy and wet places. As a concept plan just shows concepts, the next stage is a detailed plan that shows where specific plants go. Here I am just making a few changes to my bush food snack track. The first thing I did was put in the pathways. I then worked out the mature height and width of each of the trees, and then danced them around until I found their most suitable position. I kept in mind what they'll be like in 10 years' time. This bush food area is only about 8 months old, and already I'm drinking lemon myrtle tea and eating midgeon berries. Imagine in 3 to 4 years what it'd be like as a food forest. Now let's go and see Auntie Pearl and see what she's up to.
My husband's a full-time laundry enforcement officer. He's what you might call a sensitive new acreage guy. He likes to mow the friggin' lawn all day, every day, and I'm sick of it. Well, he's gone away for a month. And while he's gone, I'm going to quickly turn this place into an oasis.
Okay, let's design it first. What do you like to eat? What do you use? And how often?
Well, dear, I like to have my parsley tea and spinach juice every morning. And I do like to bathe in some nice, juicy, stewed tomatoes. And I do like my parsley tea. And I love a honey hair shampoo. My neighbours are pretty snoopy.
Okay, snoop barrier.
We love lemons, oranges, mandarins, mulberries and peaches.
Ah, lots of fruit trees.
Our veranda gets hot in summer.
A passion fruit vine.
And I can't nap with the hot afternoon summer sun in our bedroom.
Bushy trees out the window.
I want easy access to everything.
Pathways everywhere.
I love to sit outside, but I'm a bit worried about skin cancer.
Shade tree.
We do love birds.
Bird trees.
My grandchildren rarely come to visit me, so I'd love some companions.
Chickens.
And water. Oh, it's just so tranquil.
A beautiful pond.
Between you and me, dear, I do have a wind problem.
Ah, a windbreak.
What is permaculture?
Taking care of the land and growing things naturally and taking, doing things well, and I don't understand it at all, really.
This soil has been used and abused and treated like dirt. Just look at it. It's barren, devoid of nutrients and lifeless. Even weeds will have a hard time getting to know it. A year ago, Peter and June's garden was an unproductive lawn.
When we first moved in, the entire block was lawn, and it took us about 2 hours, the both of us, to mow the lawn. That's with my wife helping me. We decided to mulch the backyard. We then proceeded to purchase all the cardboard we could get around the area. Then we sheet mulched it. Probably about 2 months later we started planting. And now we have quite an abundant food supply. It's giving us all the salads we want, tomatoes and cucumbers, cauliflower and broccoli and all the good stuff, all totally organic. When we completed the backyard, I didn't really have any further requirement from a ride-on lawnmower, so we sold that, and with that money we bought a mulcher to supply us with sufficient chip for our paths and to assist us with keeping up the mulch to the garden. Yes, and if you can hear that mower in the background at the moment, it's a lady over the back, and she's got about 3 acres to mow. Time we spend in the garden, it may be the equivalent to mowing it, but it doesn't seem to be. It doesn't seem to be work. It's more pleasurable.
A rich living soil is actually being created here due to the breakdown of organic matter. The answer to most soil problems is short for organic matter. Drainage in heavy clay soils will be improved by the addition of Sandy soils will retain more moisture and nutrients by adding Worms will cross neighborhood boundaries to reach Om is the answer to a poor soil's prayers. To increase the organic matter in your life, you can start by sheet mulching over some of your garden, and here's how. 2 months later, this can be planted out. Pull the mulch apart and place some soil in the hole. Then you can plant your favorite herbs and veggie seedlings, but in the first year, no root crops. Sheet mulch gardens are a great technique for planting over lawns or weedy areas. You can also increase the nutrients in your soil by adding a home brew, comfrey fertilizer. Comfrey is a difficult plant to get rid of, so make sure you plant it where you're happy to have it for life. Fill a bucket 3/4 full of comfrey leaves. Then add some water, fill it to the top. Cover it and let it steep for about 3 weeks. You'll know it's ready because your neighbors will stop complaining about the smell. Then you can dilute this wonderful sludge 50-50 with water and pour it directly onto the plants. Comfrey leaves are so nutritious as its deep roots collect many nutrients from the soil. If you're after gold in the garden, why not start a worm farm? The worm's rich castings can be used to fertilize your plants and will attract your neighbors' lawn-avoiding worms. To start your worm farm, buy 1,000 worms. Keep them in a foam box with manure, veggie scraps, and mulch. Keep them covered with a moist hessian sack. When your first box is full of worm manure, add a second holy box on top with just scraps and manure in it. The worms will gradually move up to the second box and make themselves at home. Soon, the bottom box, empty of worms and full of black gold, is ready to be mixed into pot plants or put onto the garden. Another way to make a rich soil is with a compost pile. They're easy to make, but people often get the recipe wrong. Like making a fruit cake, the greater the variety of tasty ingredients, the better it is. You need a large quantity of carbon-based materials such as straw, leaves, and sawdust. You can alternate these with high nitrogen materials such as veggie scraps and manure. You can add things like comfrey leaves and make sure that you keep the pile moist and aerate it so that it will bake just right. Plant lots of nitrogen-fixing shrubs and trees around the garden, like crotalaria. Although keep them out of the veggie garden as they are often too competitive. By using all the techniques mentioned, you won't have to bring in so much fertilizer. Don't be a slave. Let the plants do the work for you. We just want to know, what is permaculture?
What is permaculture? Permanent culture, isn't it? Permaculture, care for the lands, care for the people, care for the earth. That's what I remember. This litre of water costs more than a litre of petrol. In fact, it costs more than twice as much. Water is one of the most valuable resources we have, but yet so often we let it take the fast route from our garden out to sea. Let's look at ways that we can stop water escaping from your garden. About 80% of water used to actually run out of my garden, but now it's less than 20% due to a variety of techniques. One of these is a terrace. This terrace actually slopes backwards so that it collects water, and at the same time it slopes off to one side. So that means when there's a large rain, rather than creating a paddy, the water runs to the fruit trees and the fruit trees can use it. Slightly different to a terrace is a swale. Swales are ditches that run on a contour. They are used to catch water on hills so that it seeps through the soil rather than sheeting down the hill and being lost. Trees planted below a swale have a moister life. Hans Zirkin uses water to grow a lot of edible aquatic plants and fish.
A great way to grow aquatic plants in a backyard is in bathtubs. Here we've got a collection of different lotuses and sagittaria set up in bathtubs. The bathtubs are filled up with a good rich growing medium up to about 100 mils or more from the surface. They're readily available from second-hand building yards, or you can advertise for them in the paper. They're cheap, last a long time. This Chinese Sagittaria forms these corms. Larger, more healthy plants early in the growing season will be bigger than this, but these can be cooked and eaten like potatoes or water chestnuts, and they're very popular with the Chinese. Okay, this is a seedling of the native variety of lotus that we collected in the Mary River. If I pull this up, you can see the fat rhizomes, although they're not as fat as what they could get. This is one of the parts of the lotus that can be eaten, but they need to be a bit bigger than this. This is a bathtub of water chestnuts which has gone into dormancy. These leaves were standing up about a metre tall, but the leaves die off in winter or in autumn, and then you've got the whole of winter to harvest the crop. You can just have a look here and see what... A bathtub like this can yield up to about 10 to 20 kilos of reasonably good-sized water chestnuts. So it's not a bad solution for backyard production. And they taste great. This open-top tank we constructed by using a throwaway galvanised iron tank as formwork, and we often use this as our ensuite swimming pool to cool off in summer. But it also collects rainwater from the roof, and it can be used to freshen up fish that are caught in muddy dams to expel the muddy flavour. And of course it could also be used to raise crayfish or prawns or anything else. We also recycle this water through a drip feature in a pond. Every house should have one. At the moment we're using this to store a few fish that we haven't got around to doing anything else with. This is a little catfish that we're breeding in the dams at Crystal Waters. There's also an eel running around in here. Smoked eel, you ever tried it? This one doesn't smoke yet. But live fish on tap is a real luxury, I can tell you.
Collecting water off your roof is also vital. Imagine if everyone did it. Plant a lot of natives in your garden, such as this midgeonberry. Also, mulch heavily, plant ground covers, and rather than just a single layer of plants, plant layer upon layer upon layer. You can also save water by planting things in the right place. For example, bananas are a very thirsty plant, so why not place them in a moist part of your garden? Lavender likes it hot and dry, so here it is, directly facing the sun and under the roofline where it doesn't get much water. Water in your garden is only as limited as your imagination.
These ponds have been included in our landscaping primarily for their aesthetic value, and also to provide a microclimate, a cooler microclimate with the water near the house. For the aesthetic value, we have a series of different lilies, which some are daytime and some are nighttime. The ponds are kept clean through a natural reed bed filtration system, and the water is pumped through the reed bed and up onto the top pond there, where it runs down through the flow form and oxygenates and energizes the water. We have small fish, we have rainbow and blue-eye Pacific, and as they establish themselves, we will be putting in larger fish, for example, silver perch. Oh, that little guy. A small pond can change the feel of your place instantly. First, select a relatively flat piece of land. Dig a hole the size you want your pond. Put down newspaper about 10 layers thick and overlapping. This way the plastic is less likely to be punctured. Line it with a double layer of thick plastic, or better still, butyl rubber. You may want to put some rocks down the bottom to keep it in place. Put your beautiful rocks around the top edge. Now fill with water. Put in your favourite aquatic plants covering less than half the pond. For example, water lilies and submerged taro in a big pot. Kangkong can be planted around the edges. Create niches for the type of animals you want to attract, such as logs for frogs. If you are worried about mozzies, buy some small fish such as blue eyes to take care of them. In our next program, we'll look at ponds for the backyard adventurer.
What is permaculture? It's a way of growing vegetables and food for people in harmony with nature, so as to least disturb the environment and to use the ecosystems in order to maintain a balance, so to have birds and other insects and animals working together and for man to have the least impact.
You don't need to wage war on pests. Instead, encourage beneficial predators such as birds, lizards, and frogs. This way, you can create a healthy balance. For example, this pond has been made to attract frogs with jumpways and safe hidey holes.
For insects, long rows of one type of vegetable are an easy, free lunch. It would be like us eating our way down a supermarket aisle, with no cash register at the end. Insects partly detect veggies by their scent, so mix veggies up with smelly things, so their scent is hidden. Using aromatic species through the garden, such as plants from the onion family, totally confuses the pests.
Certain flowers attract good insects that eat the bad insects.
The readily available pollen and nectar in flowers with small florets attracts good insects, such as hoverflies, that then go on to eat harmful insects, such as aphids. The small-headed flowers include plants from the daisy, carrot and cabbage family. Harmful insects are also repelled by smelly flowering plants such as pineapple sage and nasturtium. So use lots of flowers in your garden, giving them many uses.
When humans don't get all the nutrients they need, they get sick, and the harmful bugs are on the sideline, ready to attack. Like with us, plants need to stay healthy in order to keep the bugs away, and that begins with healthy soil.
and leave a bit to the magic of nature.
What is permaculture?
Permaculture, it's sort of companion planting humans amongst animals. I suppose it's just showing that no one is totally dominant. We're all interdependent and we're all symbiotically poised in an equal relationship with each other. And it's also got to do with eating things you like. It's so yummy, you can taste it.
Love is like a T-bone steak. Sometimes it's hot and hard to take. Sometimes it's tender and oh so red. Love is like a T-bone, yeah. Love, 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 love. Love, 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 love. Love, 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 love. Love is like a glass of wine. Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's fruity and divine.
Before introducing animals into the garden, you must prepare for them, just as you'd prepare for a newborn baby. And so, Peter, what are some of the benefits you get from having animals in your garden?
We've got 6 chooks, and they generally keep us supplied with sufficient eggs, and they also are our tractors for the garden, our fertilisers, our pest control, and we love them dearly. That sounds a bit foul, but we really do love them dearly. We do lock them up occasionally when we've got young seedlings in, because they tear them about a bit, so we confine them then. They have a fairly good run. In the yard, in the run, they have a avocado tree, and there's bananas, and there's plenty of shade in the summertime. And on the fence, we have passion fruit growing.
So let's see what Phil and Susan get from their suburban chickens.
A lot of eggs, a lot of soil for the garden. That's the main material we use as fertilising the veggie patch is just soil that we dig out of the chook pen. Composting services, and yeah, lots of cuddles. They're good pets, and we also put them out in a weeding machine, just and traipse them around the garden a bit to clean up patches and things like that. So, yeah.
By studying the needs and the products of your animals and garden, the products from one can supply the needs of the other. This then determines how you design your animals to fit in your garden. There are so many animals that you can have in your garden. Here are just a few.
This is our crayfish. It's about 8 months old and Dad said it's ready to eat. I call this one Chris after my little brother.
Hi guys. Okay. These birds are squab pigeons. We use them to breed for their meat, and we eat the offspring when they're about 12 weeks of age. At that time, the meat is quite tender. We let them out about once every week for a fly after they've stayed inside the cage for at least a month to start with. They only need some grain and some water to keep them happy, and they only take up a very small space in the backyard.
This is my lawnmower. It doesn't take petrol. What do you think it is? It's a guinea pig.
What is permaculture? Permaculture is recycling. I'm going to get some tahini in my jar. No, I can't do this. What is permaculture? Permaculture is my life.
American lawns, according to Bill Mollison, use more resources and more poisons than any other agricultural industry in the world. Imagine if we converted some of these lawns to food. We could feed millions.
In the middle of an industrial estate, Phil and Susan have created a permaculture oasis.
Well, wherever I lived, I've always put a garden in, and even in lots of rented houses, I've had some very complicated and interesting gardens.
About 5 years ago, I suppose, moved here, and everything happened all at once almost. You know, we sort of made the vegetable beds, planted our fruit trees. It used to look a bit like next door. That's a sort of flat mowed expanse. I think we scandalise the neighbours to a certain extent. Not that we care. And have this continual rolling meal some weekends where our friends just drop in and we just keep, you know, sort of harvesting the garden or tucking into the cheeses and the other stuff we bring in. It's a good life. It's a good life.
And that's it. You may have thought permaculture was a rather dry and theoretical way of looking at gardening, but I hope we've shown you it's anything but.
In fact, permaculture is about a lot more than just gardening. It also includes communities, legal and economic systems, housing, appropriate technology, and it's a philosophy for life.
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. Without the nations, our land is girt by sea. And beauty rich and rare, with laws and laws and things, advance Australia fair, with lots of things and rugby league, advance Australia fair. Fencing wires, advance Australia fair.
I think that's how it goes.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
That's the way I remember it.